Greetings and salutations. This is Abdelhadi with The Bitter Truth, where we may not have all the answers, but we're going to ask an awful lot of questions. You can also support the show, which we would greatly appreciate, by visiting thebittertruth.info. And there you can listen to the shows for free, in addition to YouTube and Spotify and iTunes and Podcast Addict, wherever you listen to these things, Stitcher. And then you can also read some of the essays that are there. I haven't done one in a while, but there's a bunch there that you probably haven't read yet. And of course, you can buy some fabulous swag to make your life better if you like t-shirts and all that kind of thing, and you don't want to subscribe to a Patreon deal, which we have that link on the on the website as well. If you want to just go to Patreon, you can visit patreon.com/thebittertruth. And there you can, pick your subscription thing and, support the show. And like I said, we appreciate it, as obviously, I think you probably figured out we don't take advertising. So there you go. Anyway, a bit to cover today. I'm just going to kind of go over some stuff. I was talking to somebody over the week, Tuesday, I think it was Wednesday, this local bar by my house. You've heard me mention it before. And there's some shit-libbed, chewy blue people there. Nice that they are. They just have a really skewed way of thinking, mainly because they get it from television. And I don't know when the last book they read was. And this is not to say that I'm some grand mal intellectual, but compared to these guys, I'm like Chris Hedges. So it's annoying. It's annoying. And it's based on how easily it is to manipulate people's hatred. It's always the scandal of the week or the outrage of the week. And then they move on to the next thing, and they don't care. And they also don't care when their side does it. That if you notice a theme with this show, and it's a theme in most of my relationships, I don't deal with injustice very well, and I don't care whose side does it. Quick side note, Joe Biden has deported 690,000 asylum seekers this year, just this year. Asylum seekers, meaning, how the right wing always bitch about, come here legally and we'll let you in. Okay, these are legal asylum seekers doing it legally, getting to the border, going through the processing centers, ending up in cages for the time that they're getting their cases heard or whatever, but they're in cages. They're not in facilities. I know when Trump had them, they were cages. No one cared when Obama built them, but when Trump had them, they were cages. Now that now that Biden has them, they're not facilities that the press has zero access to. We don't get to see the kids in cages like we saw when Trump was president. So I guess it's okay when the Democrats do it, and it's not okay when conservatives do it. Again, see, to me, that's bullshit. The best year Trump ever had was 300,000 deportees. The best year. His first term was half of what Obama's first term was. And why? Because shit libs go to sleep. I wrote an essay last year right after election called Lullaby and Goodnight. And it wasn't like that was the Ghost of Christmas Future. I just consume different media and I actually read things, and I've got a decent sense of history. And I knew it was going to happen. This is what happened under Obama. Everyone romantically protested the wars when Bush got us into 2 illegal wars. I remember like Rage Against the Machine, who I love to pieces, but they were like all, talking shit on Bush, and rightfully so. And then they all went to sleep at the wheel when Obama became president. All of them. The only people that I remember protesting Obama's wars was Cindy Sheehan and Medea Benjamin at Code Pink and smattering people. But no one was protesting Obama's wars. He turned them mostly into drone wars. So it wasn't as many boots on the ground. We weren't seeing all the flag draped coffins coming home, although there were flag draped coffins coming home. The civilian death count has never really accurately been assessed. If I'm going to quote Mad Dog Mattis, James Mad Dog Mattis, Trump's first Secretary of Defense, I think it was Secretary of Defense or NSA advisor after Mike Flynn, regardless. He said famously that when they were doing the body counts in Afghanistan, he goes, my soldiers have better things to do with their time than to count, dead guys in a cave, something to that effect. Real American there. Again, when the Republicans do it, it's okay. When the Democrats do it, it's not, and vice versa. And I don't know if anyone really notices how easy it is. I got people, one of the discussions I had this last week, somebody saying, oh, those fucking Russians. And I said, do me a favor, replace the word Russian with Jew or Mexican and see how that sounds. Seems okay to say fucking Russian. Up until about fairly recently, it was okay to say fucking Arabs, right? But now it's like, oh, you're Islamophobic. So, which anyway, but yeah, we do that. So, and why was it so easy for this guy to go fucking Russians? Because he got his dander up in the last 5 years because he suddenly got woke, because he's like one of these idiots who thinks that everything was great before January of 2017, which it was not. We had racism back then. Really? Gee, do we have racism in America? I didn't notice until Trump came. Right? Yeah, we had racism in America before Trump. We were in illegal wars before Trump. We destroyed Libya before Trump. They have an open slave market now before Trump. We got into Syria and destroyed that country. And and because of Biden's sanctions, which he's continuing on top of Trump, I can never say that word right. Sanctions, which he's continuing on top of Trump's sanctions, which he continued on top of Obama's sanctions. Syria can't even rebuild. They can't even get the stuff to rebuild because most of the EU won't sell them what they need. And we took a net positive country. They actually had enough oil to sustain their economy. They sold enough oil to sustain their economy. They had more than enough wheat to sustain their economy and feed their own people. Now they have a starving problem because we bombed that country into oblivion. And even though we did that, they still beat us and they still have their president. The idea was a regime change war, if I recall correctly. And here's the thing. This is the bullshit on Syria. People always go, well, how do you know? Let me ask you a simple question. This is the simple question. Okay. Some of these things reduce themselves to a simple question. Like, did my girlfriend fuck another guy? Well, yeah. So, solves that riddle. If ISIS and Al-Qaeda were being fought by Bashar al-Assad in Syria, and we don't like ISIS and Al-Qaeda, theoretically, then shouldn't we help Assad, who is a secular leader? He's a Ba'ath socialist. He's not a Muslim leader. Same Saddam Hussein, but we painted him as a Muslim leader so we could justify killing him. And by the way, Colin Powell just died a couple of weeks back, and his service was the other day. Pardon me while I fart. But that guy committed way more war crimes than Saddam Hussein in a wet dream. Yet we hung Saddam Hussein, and Colin Powell gets the statesman send-off, right? Donald Rumsfeld, same thing. When Kissinger goes, he's going to get the same hagiography. The guy's a fucking piece of shit. And and by the way, I had some cards and letters from the last show I did with Cindy Sheehan, and I'm trying to cut down the cussing because apparently I did a lot. I listened to all these shows before I released them, so I know that I winced a little bit. So I'm going to try to, because there's nothing better than a well-placed fuck, I always say. So I'm going to try to, reduce that for y'all. But Kissinger's going to get the same send-off. Right. He's going to get the same send off. This is not rocket science. He's going to get the big hagiography and, he was a key part of the Vietnam War and he won a Nobel Peace Prize. And the war ended 3 years after he won the Nobel Peace Prize, which I find hilarious. But so anyway, why was this person so, into saying, fucking Russians? Because Russiagate, which was a scam, which, by the way, I've collected $400 out of $500 in wagers on Russiagate. There's one schmuck who still won't pay me. And I haven't spoken to him about this since the last few weeks when we've seen a couple of indictments, notably Michael Sussman and Igor Dichenko, who both worked on the Steele dossier and in Michael Sussman's case was indicted for lying to investigators, claiming he wasn't working for the Clinton campaign. When he took these meetings with the FBI, he was billing the Clinton campaign. So apparently he was working for the Clinton campaign. He went ahead and was indicted for lying to investigators, lying to the FBI, lying to the CIA, and saying that we had a Russian problem, right? So he's indicted. Igor Dichenko, is indicted now, last week. So all that to say, these are real indictments pertaining to a real case, unlike Paul Manafort, who got busted for tax evasion, and they tried to connect him to this Russian shit, but they couldn't. So he got busted for a bunch of other shady shit because he's a shady human being. This is real stuff. And so I'm waiting for this to go up the food chain because I want to see Hillary Clinton indicted. I want to see John Podesta indicted. Because one thing that these Russiagators love to ignore was what the emails actually said. And what they also ignore is that the emails weren't hacked. They weren't obtained by a hack. They were obtained internally on a download and handed to Julian Assange. That's how that went down. Okay. And again, how are people's hatreds misplaced? When Julian Assange busted W's war crimes, which were legion, and by the way, he's busted a ton of governments. The world does not like him. China doesn't like him. Russia doesn't like him. That's why no one is really stepping up to help him while he's being tortured in Belmarsh prison. Right. But I live here in America and I deal with Americans and all they know is American Clinton. But when he busted the W war crimes, he got his own TED talk. Okay. With shit libs in the audience, NPR tools, like breathlessly applauding hanging on his every word. Then we exposed the Clinton campaign cheating Bernie Sanders, which they did. It's in print. So then suddenly he was the enemy without really going over what the emails had to say. Anyway, but again, it's so easy to manipulate, people's hatred. Just easy. All you got to do is like throw some chum out. They're like sharks. 80% of people are not very smart. I interviewed Heaton last week. His show's going to air pretty soon, but he made a really good point that most people don't think in a binary fashion, which is a nice way of saying most people are stupid. And why are most people stupid? Not because they're stupid, not because they didn't have their Wheaties, but because most people, we've killed the printed word. And most people don't read anymore. They don't read for pleasure. They can barely get through an article online. And what they do read, the people I know that do read, God bless them. I mean, at least they're reading something, but it's all fiction, which is nothing. I mean, I love literature. I got no problem with literature. I wrote a novel and there's some facts in there, but it's a novel. I wrote a fiction. I get it. But people don't read biographies. They don't read historical nonfiction. They just don't. And the books they do read are shit biographies on Jeff Bezos or, Steve Jobs or some crap, because we have this billionaire worship in this country. But yeah, I mean, but again, now Putin is the boogeyman, right? And we made fun of Bush, right? When he said he could see into Putin's soul through his eyes, right? But now with the rehab that Bush got and Rumsfeld and Powell and all these assholes, nobody cares. Nobody cares that Bush said that about Putin, but now Putin's the boogeyman. But gee, Bush, didn't you see into his soul? Didn't you just check to see if he's just a righteous man? Why does he get a rehab based on that statement alone? If Putin is the bad guy, which I don't necessarily believe he is, any worse than any other dickhead that runs a country. Let's face it, these countries are all imperialist. It's just what they are. But to sit there and try to give Russia this superpower, they spend $80 billion a year on their defense, up from $65 billion a year up until 2017. And they're still the number 2 nuclear power in the world. They got 150 million people. They got the GDP of South Korea. And yet they're able to provide Medicare for all their people, healthcare for all their people, and free college. Isn't that interesting? Meanwhile, here in the United States, we have 60 million starving people. I don't use food insecure because over 25% of the country is starving. Food insecure sounds like a food allergy or something. They are not food insecure. They're starving. Here's the definition of starving. If you don't remember your last meal and you don't know when your next meal is coming, you're probably starving. Okay. But yet again, right. We call them fucking Russians and all this nonsense just because Rachel Madcow worked this country up into a lather. And I watch some of these things a couple times a week just for homework. I can't stomach it. I'm not even a journalist. Okay. I'm a former comedian with a day job and a mic and a loud mouth. Right. With a sponge memory. Okay, those are my selling points. And yet I know when somebody sends me something, I'll check 3 or 4 sources to make sure it's at least credible. I mean, I just watched Joy-Ann Reid take down Eric Clapton because he said, hey, listen, my hands didn't work for 3 weeks after the second jab I got for COVID. And instead of like playing parts of his interview, which I saw, and it was very sober and very cogent and very, he wasn't some reactionary right-wing freak. She just went off on him like he was because he doesn't pitch the corporate narrative, which is, nothing's wrong with the vaccines. There is some things wrong with the vaccine. Now, here's the thing. I don't believe in mandates. I do believe in vaccines. In general, I mean, not the 90 vaccines they try to give an infant newborn because that's stupid, but mumps, measles, rubella, smallpox, this thing, if you're subject to COVID, like I have a friend who's got comorbidities. He smoked like 2 packs a day for 25 years and just barely quit 5 years ago. He's going to be a candidate for COPD for sure. So he's going to have breathing disorders maybe later in life. He's obese, right? And he knows this. But guess what? He got the vaccines because, he understands his situation. Do you mandate it for, say, kids under 15, which through this entire pandemic, only 500 kids under 15 have died of COVID. And 95% of those were all comorbidities, diabetes, obesity, high blood pressure. Yes, kids have high blood pressure, but 500 kids under 15, and yet we're mandating kids to get the vaccine worldwide, right? Who the hell are we? And then we won't sell the vaccine to, say, the African, or give the vaccine to African countries. Only 2% of the continent of Africa is vaccinated, right? But Joanne Reed has the nerve to go after Eric Clapton and say, he's a right winger. He's an anti-vaxxer. He's not an anti-vaxxer. He got vaccinated because he's like 80 or something now. He's Charlie Watts' age, I think. So he got it. And guess what? He had to cancel his tour because his hands didn't work for 3 weeks. If you're a guitar player, I'm a musician. If your limbs don't work, you can't play music. That's it. I mean, Phil Collins is on tour right now with his kid playing drums, and he's sitting in a chair because he can't even stand, which is terrible. But so for people to just dismiss that out of hand, like Joanne Reed does, because she's an awful human being. And if you've ever seen her reportage, she's just an awful, snarky human being. And none of her journalism includes any factual anything. It's all opinion. Not unlike Rachel Madcow or Sean Hanjabadi. Okay. But I digress. So what's the point, though, in all of this? Again, if it's your side, nobody cares. But when it's their side, it's the work of the devil, right? And I'm not a Republican, and I don't like the Republicans. I don't like the Republicans because they openly steal in broad daylight. All these rehabbed Republicans, right? By the way, got a rehab because their only achievement, their only reason for existing, that they're loved by liberals now, the shit libs, is because they don't like Trump, right? Mitt Romney. I love Mitt Romney. Liz Cheney is the darling of the Democrats now. When her father, Dr. Evil, was running the White House under the Bush administration, basically got us into 2 fucking illegal wars, spending trillions of dollars, murdering millions of people, killing thousands of our kids. And yet she's the darling because she doesn't like Trump because he's the mean orange man. He does exactly what the system is. See? And this is where people are so fucking stupid. He does exactly what the system is. He continued on Obama policies, made them a little worse in some cases, tried to make them a little better. I mean, let's look at the bounty scam a couple of years back, the Russian bounty scam. Trump was trying to get out of Afghanistan, by the way. So the CIA concocted this story about the Russian bounty scam, and it was met with no criticism whatsoever. Nobody even said, hey, this kind of looks like the shit we used to do in the 70s. Nobody said a word. The shit libs were all over it. See, explain yourself, Donald Trump. You're a Putin puppet. Right? Biden gets out of Afghanistan-ish. If you know the details of that, it's ish. We still have contractors there, which should be illegal. And it was a mess. And everyone blamed him for it, which I can give a shit. I hate Joe Biden. But on that thing, if you want to blame anybody, you got to go back to Jimmy Carter and Zbigniew Brzezinski. I don't give a fuck if Jimmy Carter is building houses now. Good for him. But he was an asshole who listened to this right-wing dipshit who talked us into upsetting a country that was a pretty chill socialist country. 200-year monarchy in the mid-70s was a bloodless coup, and the king's cousin took over. But they had free healthcare. They had college, and women had rights. Women could teach school and wear clothes. They weren't wearing hijabs and all this nonsense. So what do? We import a bunch of bathtub-trained psychotics, right-wing psychotic religious fanatics to fuck with the government of Afghanistan, client state of Russia, right? They didn't invade Afghanistan, if you don't know this, right? They came in to help their client like we would help our client. If somebody tried to invade Canada, even though they got an army, we would help them. Okay. If someone tried to invade Mauritania, now that they're in the NATO league or whatever, we would help them. They're our client state, right? No different. But we painted it as an aggression, and we painted it as an aggression. And then we went ahead and treated it as though we were liberating Afghanistan when we weren't. right? We were just simply enforcing, and this is what we do in the Middle East. We don't like the socialist shit at all. So we will back a right-wing dictator every goddamn time. We're trying to replace Bashar al-Assad, who, by the way, is not a mass murderer, contrary to what you see on TV. We're trying to replace him with right-wing nut jobs like ISIS and Al-Qaeda and Al-Nusra. Again, the logic of that. So I digress. So Biden getting out of Afghanistan was a mess. And of course, the conservatives got all pissed. And the shitlibs who were Republicans anyway, the blue Republicans, I like to call them, the blue meanies, they were all over his ass too. You're not going to get out of these things easy. It's a mess to get out of illegal wars. See, when we got out of when we got out of Germany, Italy, and Japan, there was a return address there. These guys weren't like just groups of ragtag groups of guys. They were real armies with real air forces and everything else, with real governments who could do a real surrender, which is what they did. So us getting out of Germany, Italy, getting out of France, because we were in France too to fight the Germans, along with the Russians. Everyone loves to forget that too. But when we got out of there, it was a lot cleaner because it was a real war. These bullshit police actions that we've been doing since Korea, which is why this is always a mess to get out. And the 12-year-olds who want to blame Biden, like I said, I can't stand him. But whoever got out of there was going to face this same kind of mess, right? But gee, you're going to end the forever war. Yeah, sorry, big military. Sorry, defense industry. Sorry, big war. Sorry, you don't get to make any more money off this shit. Of course, don't cry a river just after these assholes, because we're still fucking about in Libya. We're up our ass in Africa. China has 2 bases outside of China. One is in Eritrea. So now suddenly we have if you've been listening the last few weeks, that fake whistleblower from off of Facebook. Now we're having issues in Eritrea and Ethiopia. I wonder why. Couldn't be because China has a base there, and the Roads and Belts initiative they're doing in Ethiopia and Eritrea about to make them allies of China and not the United States, because we're a bunch of cocksuckers and we bomb people and take their ship for free. Okay. That's what we do. So do the EU, by the way, but I don't live in the EU. I'm just talking about the United States. So, like I said earlier, with Obama, got a complete pass, right? Nobody protested him. Nobody protested him during his presidency when 6.1 million families lost their homes, right? And 40% of American wealth was just flushed down the toilet with the banking scandal. And not one of those guys was indicted. Not one of those guys were indicted. We had a right-wing healthcare plan that was designed by the Heritage Foundation shoved down our throat. And these shitlibs will tell me, well, at least it's okay. Yeah, that's why 30 million, this before the COVID crisis, by the way. So that's why 30 million people don't have healthcare, because Obama's plan was so goddamn good. Before the COVID crisis, 50,000 people a year were dying from lack of healthcare. And it's said that the COVID crisis was like 800,000 people now. 200,000 of those people that have died from COVID would have maybe not died had they had healthcare. 200,000 people that died from COVID did not have health insurance, healthcare at all whatsoever. Not to mention the million bankruptcies that happen every year because of medical issues. And all of these people, wait for it, had health insurance. Why is it if you have health insurance, you're filing for bankruptcy? Oh, I don't know. Maybe because of the ever expanding copays and what they call, if you have a job and you've sat through open enrollment, you hear this term copay, which is a nice way of saying you're paying for it. And copays are up to 20% of a bill. Not to mention what's denied in the first place. Okay. I'm acquainted with a gentleman last fall, 2020, hospitalized for COVID. Pre-vaccine, by the way. So those of you judgmental little pricks who want to sit there and say, well, he got vaccinated before the vaccine came out. So shut the fuck up. Okay. So he got hospitalized because of COVID. Can you tell I'm a little angry today? I'm pretty pissed off. So, he faces, still in the middle of it. I haven't talked to him since December, but he was looking at $106,000, $106,000. And I know several people in my own personal life that I know better than this guy that have faced similar issues where things were pre-approved, right? You're authorized to treat, but not authorized to pay. Those are two big differences with the insurance business. So the hospital, the doctor, whatever, hey, you're authorized to treat them, but then come down the road, hey, you're not authorized to pay, or they do the big excuse. Oh, we miscoded that. We're really sorry. That's not covered because it was miscoded. That's another one they like to do. So all of that to say, when Obama pulled this shit, if McCain won or Romney won and did this, liberals would be howling at the moon. They would be howling at the moon. But it's their blue Jesus. It's Obama, who was a Republican. He ran as a Republican. He ran government as a Republican. And I'm sorry, this is right-wing country. The shit libs are as left as it's going to get. And that's really sad, because all they are capitulators to a right-wing corporate entity, which is the United States of America. We are 100% privatized. 100% privatized. And if you listen to the show and you got some expertise in banking or healthcare or whatever, you want to come on and discuss this with me, you are more than welcome. More than welcome. Why I'm doing more shows this year by myself than in times past is I got really sick and tired of catching up with people, trying to get them to come on the show because they talk a lot of smack online, or they're great at a party and they happen to have a PhD in whatever. And then when you try to get them on the show, oh, I don't want to go on the record. And I understand that, because, you got a job and things like that. But boy, is that a pussy move? Is that a coward move? Seriously. And I know I just said pussy and people are going to piss off about that. I don't care either. But with Obama, the shit libs would have been howling at the moon if this was a blue Republican guy. And the GOP would have gladly accepted all of Obama's behavior if it was Romney or McCain. Why didn't they like when Obama did it? Right-wing shit. Well, because he's not on their side, A, and B, the more sinister answer is because he was a black guy. I had a lot of problems with Obama and did not like him as a president. I voted for him in 2008, and boy, was that a wake-up call. I didn't vote for him in 2012. It was he proved to be an abject waste of time. He gutted habeas corpus. He gutted posse comitatus, and no one said boo. If it was a Republican that did that, again, howling at the moon. But if there was a Republican president doing all this, then he would have been fine. All right. But because he's a Democrat, and let's face it, I said it a second ago, he's a black guy, and most Republicans, a lot of Democrats too, by the way, don't like black guys, especially black guys being president, no matter how right-wing they are. So this consensus that he was looking for, that he never got, was a myth. And that's what the Democrats are good at doing, is creating just, a big myth, and then whatever. So then we look at Joe Biden, right? Again, this is why your hatred is misplaced. And I say that because, and I'm going to get to the punchline a little early here and then move on to other stuff. But the point of all this is why your hatred is misplaced is because you treat these guys like they're gods, right? The Deus in machina, right? The Greek play tool. And I see it in movies all the time, right? And it's the last second, the savior comes and saves everybody or whatever, Superman or whoever. And so, we treat politicians like that, and we don't damn the system. And it's time to damn the system. It's time to call the system out and quit blaming Trump or blaming Obama, or thinking that Obama's going to do something, or thinking that Trump is going to do something, or Biden, which, leads me into the next subject here, kind of, because I'm shocked that people are shocked that Biden sucks so bad. I didn't even know that a parliamentarian had this much juice. The last time I read about a parliamentarian was about 12 or 13 years ago, when the Republican Senate had a problem with the parliamentarian and they fired him. And they got I think it was a lady to replace that parliamentarian. It's a job that pays about $175,000 a year. So if you all want to apply, knock yourself out. But I didn't know the parliamentarian had that much juice. It's not a constitutional position. It's an administrative role. But the Democrats, any excuse will do. I know that in business. Any excuse will do. Reasons are reasons, but an excuse is just an excuse. Yeah. And people accept it. No $15 minimum wage. He promised to wipe out student debt. Now that's gone. But the one thing he did promise last summer in front of a bunch of bankers in 2020 was that nothing will fundamentally change. And you're fucking A right about that. Nothing will fundamentally change. You remember when every Democrat was running on the border and they were like, oh yeah, you're welcome here. A few months ago, Kamala Harris went down to the border, gave out, flamed out in spectacular fashion, gave a horrible speech. Don't come. If you're thinking about coming, don't come. It's dangerous. And we'll more than likely kill you or beat you with bullwhips because we're a bunch of racist fucking assholes. But last year when I was, and these people, I say losing friends, if you lost this person over an opinion, they weren't your friend, right? They're a good acquaintance. You should know this in your own life if you don't know it already. You have your real friends, the people that know you, love you anyway. And then you have your really good acquaintances. These are the people that you go to parties with, or, you hang out at the bar here and there with, or you go to, you go watch a concert, or, you go to a baseball game or something together, you get a field trip together and go do something fun like that. They're not your real friends, as evidenced by how many people are no longer speaking to you based on your current political opinion, right? And so last year, when I was getting into discussions, and this happened with several of my Black friends, which blew my mind, because they would sit there and tell me that I was a racist. I'm kind of going, okay, do you know what the crime bill is? And this happened in person a couple of times. This happened online a lot. Oh, there you go again, bringing up the past. The crime bill is something we're still paying for. And if you don't know the current incarceration rates amongst Black and brown people and poor whites, because there's a smattering of them too, because of the crime bill, if you're not familiar with the over-militarized police that we've had over the last 20 years, and you're shocked every time you see it on television, that's the crime bill. Biden also voted for DOMA. That was not a Republican thing. That was something that Bush and Reagan could not get through. Clinton got it through, and then went on the 700 Club to brag about it. But if you say this to the shitlib, they lose their fucking mind, right? Well, he was really sorry about that. Is that really sorry? Sorry? I regret dropping my phone in the toilet. Sorry doesn't cut it when I destroy lives and communities. Sorry doesn't cut it when I destroy entire countries and create failed states, right? But I know no shitlib that will bag on Clinton, despite his many failings. He was a shitty president. He's probably one of the worst presidents of our lifetime, mostly because he got the Bush-Reagan agenda through, including gutting Glass-Steagall, which led to the crash in 2008, by the way. But, they don't complain. And despite the fact that he did all this right-wing shit, including gutting welfare, 70% of the recipients were kids. And these programs did not involve any sort of job training or interim safety net prior to being canceling welfare. He just cut people loose. And did we create enterprise zones? Did we bring jobs into those areas? No, we did not. We just did the right-wing fucking thing of fucking people. So the Republicans should have loved Clinton. Why didn't they? It's because he was a Democrat and he wasn't on their side. See, if you think there's a side, now that the mandates and the vaccine is becoming the new culture war, there's only 4. I used to say gays, guns, and abortion. Add COVID to that, because there's no reason why a mandate should be. First of all, scientifically speaking, mandates don't work. The World Health Organization told us this at the beginning of last year. Mandates don't work. You want to lick this thing, get a vaccine out, get the weakest people, elderly, comorbidities, people that haven't had it. If you already had COVID, you probably won't get it again, right? That's another scientific thing that no one wants to talk about. And again, I'm not against the vaccine, but I'm against mandates. I'm against shutting down businesses and not paying them to do so. That's reckless. It's reckless and stupid, but it's not if you're creating a system where your wealthy buddies who pay for your campaigns are going to get all those properties anyway, like BlackRock, for example. So with Biden, if he voted for every war. Again, if he was a Republican, people would be howling at the moon. They go, "Oh, Joe Manchin is so evil and awful." Biden is every bit as bad as Joe Manchin. Biden's nickname he was Senator Credit Card when he was in the Senate. Why do you think Delaware is the number one state in the union to incorporate? They got the most favorable laws, and Biden has ushered every bit of that in there. Everyone goes on about Hunter Biden sitting on the board of Burisma, which he did too, but he also sat on the board of MBNA, one of the largest credit card companies in the country. He was on the board at there as well, with no experience, for $1 million a year because of Senator Credit Card. Biden is his old man, right? Again, he just gets a free pass. And last year, everyone was like, "Oh, you're going to bring up Anita Hill?" Yeah, that's why we have Clarence Thomas, asshole. So you can tell me that's in the past? We're still paying for that mistake. See, DOMA, we were paying for that for a long time until fairly recently when it was overturned in the Supreme Court. That'll never happen again, by the way. So there's a bunch of things that people's hatred, I say misplaced hatred, because you keep going on what you're fed and you don't question and you don't analyze and go, well, wait a minute. If that's not right. Just because my side does it, does that make it right? No one asks that anymore, seemingly, because most of the people I know don't. And if I say the Republicans are a bunch of racists to a Republican, oh, well, what kind of empirical evidence do you have? Oh, and they lose their shit. Bag on Democrats all day. Right. But by the way, largely the same policies. They're taking money from the same places that you don't want them taking money from. They are lockstep 95% of the time with each other. Right. They might pay some lip service, one against the other, but it doesn't really matter. They take money from the same places. And except for gays, guns, and abortions, and like I said, now the mandates, they pretty much agree on everything. They don't care. And they're flying around on Jeff Epstein's plane, or they were till he died. I mean, if you want to look at that guest list, it's a who's who of both sides. Ehud Barak, former Israeli prime minister. You know, Bill Clinton was on that plane. Donald Trump was on that plane. Former New Mexico Democrat governor Bill Richardson was on that plane. Alan Dershowitz was on that plane, visiting the islands and the farms and everything else. Bill Gates, you know, one of his lawyers at the Gates Foundation was the executor of Jeffrey Epstein's estate. Don't you think that's interesting? And don't you think it's interesting that Bill Gates' wife left him because apparently the allegations are more the allegations, right? You don't get a divorce, or maybe, you know, who knows what happens to two people, but I'll say it, right? But the shit libs don't want to admit that. Oh, Bill Gates is so awesome. He's so awesome. You know, it's like, no, he's not. He owns the most farmland in the United States. He is the holder of the most farmland in the United States. And he's also trying to get a patent on water. He's trying to pull the Nestle here. And it was also him that went to Oxford University when they struck a deal with AstraZeneca to get the vaccine into Africa. And Bill Gates swung his, you know, big computer penis around and got them to not do it because he was concerned about the profit margin from when we finally sell the vaccine to those African governments, most of whom cannot afford it, which is why Africa has a 2% vaccination rate, unlike, say, Singapore, which has a 93% vaccination rate. And they have a surge in COVID cases. So maybe we should ask these questions more intelligently. I think so. But again, back to Bill Gates. So now we're not accepting people from Africa to come in the United States because they're from Africa. Isn't that sort of equal to when Trump said we don't want people from those shithole countries? Isn't that sort of the nicer shit lib way of saying that? We don't want people from shithole countries, but now we don't want people from Africa. Why? Because they're not vaccinated. Why? Because Bill Gates won't let them. Why? Because we allow it. We're going to have to, I'm going to wrap up here in the next couple of minutes. But this is what I love about what's happening in the last couple of months. Strikes are happening, and we're going to need general strikes. Fuck the election. Vote if you want to. The value of it, it's like talking about wiping your own ass. I don't care. Vote on some propositions. Vote locally for sure. And I do believe that most Democrats are decent people locally. They try to do the right thing locally. So when they try to run for Congress or the presidency is when, or even governorships, when they get like Terry McAuliffe losing in Virginia, who fucking cares? Like shit libs tearing their hair out. Like, oh my God, that guy is a dialed in Clintonite from back in the day. He ran the 96 campaign for Clinton. He was the DNC chair from 2001 to 2005, I think it was. Just the typical corporate blue shill, right? So the Republican won. What's the difference? Not as nice tweets, right? I mean, what's the real difference? And anyone wants to tell me racism? That's like a war on terror or a war on dandruff. You're never going to fight, quote, racism. People are always going to be racist, and they're always going to be assholes. The best you can expect to do is get them to curb their behavior, which we were good at for a number of years. And then we kind of lost track and got off the rails for a little bit. Everyone loves to forget that Black Lives Matter started under Barack Obama, right? Because he didn't do jack or shit about police brutality. Not a fucking thing. Not a fucking thing. He walked right into the White House and just did exactly what the cops wanted him to do. Again, the system is the problem, not the other guy. Indict the system. Quit indicting the problem. If you're a person who loves to put up, anti-Republican slams or whatever, or anti-Democrat slams, I challenge you to put up the opposite guy and slam them. If you're always bagging on Republicans, I challenge you to put up the fact that Joe Biden, his administration, his secretary of the Interior has approved already something like 4,000 fracking and drilling contracts on federal and tribal lands, 6,000 by the end of the year. I haven't seen a report lately. Last I checked, it was like 3,500 in the summer, and it's going to be higher by the end of the year, right? And while he's backed off of some other drilling, he's increased it on federal and tribal lands by a lot. But I thought the Democrats were the science party. Apparently, they're not the science party. They're the money party, just like the Republicans. The system is the problem. The system is the disease. You're gonna tell me to vote blue in 2022 because the Republicans might take the House. Fuck you. The Republicans wouldn't even come close to taking the House and the Senate if the Democrats did things for people. With an executive order, Biden could forgive student loan debt. $1.3 trillion now, I think is what it is. You could have easily, that's one day of bank bailouts. That's the military budget for a year. One-time shot. Boom. Not every year, just a one-time shot. Right. And create a refund program for people that did pay for college. Right. I mean, I'm not going to apply because when I went to, college in the 80s, it was almost free. I paid $100 a quarter. I'm cool. Keep it. But people that were paying $7,000 a quarter, like my friend's kid, got out of my old school a couple of years ago, give him a refund. Right. Give him a refund. Well, how much is that going to be? How much do wars cost? Start asking that question, because now we're saber rattling China after we got our asses kicked in Afghanistan. By the way, if a Republican, which, you know what, I take that back, because last year a Republican was saber rattling China. In fact, for several years, Trump has been saber rattling China, and the shit libs didn't say boo about it. I had my little liberal friends here in Austin tell me with a straight face, to my face, that we need a more muscular response to China. Well, we need a more muscular response to China, because, they're stealing our intellectual property. So we need to go to World War III because they ripped off an iPhone recipe. Seriously? Check yourself. And now Biden is saber rattling China and using Taiwan. It's none of our business. Number one. Number two, Taiwan is a province of China, in case you don't know that. Okay. The Brits gave it back to them in 1997. It belongs to China. I would love, and in the last 4 or 5 years between Trump and Biden, we have sold them $5 billion worth of weapons. I would love to see China get busted for selling California $5 billion worth of weapons, because California is having issues with the next Republican president or whatever, and they're going to secede from the union, and we're going to help them. China's like, we're going to help you guys, right? We would lose our fucking mind. If China had ships in the Gulf of Mexico, we would lose our mind. Meanwhile, for the last 4 years, we have had our Navy patrolling the South China Sea to saber rattle a nuclear power. And why? Because in 2017, they discovered, without having to fire a shot or kill a human being, they discovered a bunch of oil and natural gas in their own backyard, and they've been pumping it out. It's something ridiculous amount of like 1 million gallons a day they pump out of the South China Sea, and something like 1,500 cubic meters of natural gas a day. It's these ridiculous numbers, and we don't like that because it's going to upset our apple cart. So instead of making a peace with our enemies and deals with our friends, we've engaged in this Cold War again, which gets back to the whole Russiagate scandal. All that did was erupt a whole new Cold War. We saber rattled a nuclear power, and now too. Why? Because we created the environment. And why? We created the environment because the fucking Democrats could not admit that Hillary Clinton was so awful and so baggage laden that she could not beat an orange game show host political novice. And the campaign for $2 billion was one of the most inefficient campaigns in the history of American campaigns. You had $2 billion, and you're going to sit there and tell me that Facebook upset your apple cart? First of all, it wasn't the Russian government. It was a Russian troll farm putting out memes to get clickbait. One of the memes was famously Bernie in a cartoon looking like a bodybuilder in a thong with his arms pointed into the air like a body poser, saying he was fighting Jesus. And like stupid shit like that. Like a clickbait farm was accused of upsetting the Hillary Clinton machine. They spent $100,000 on Facebook ads. 60% of those ads came out after the election, and those memes had nothing to do with the election that we did see. But that's the cause. That's like that stupid Innocent of Muslims video. They got blamed for Benghazi a few years back, if you remember. Some guys in Monrovia, totally stoned, and made up this Muslim spoof video. It's all bad Zoom backgrounds and stuff like that. And we blame that for Benghazi. A bunch of guys in Libya saw a video, some dudes in Monrovia banging their girlfriend, and they're like, oh, yeah. Nobody asked why we were in Libya. Nobody asked why Chris Stevens, Operation Timber Sycamore, if you don't know that, why Chris Stevens was funneling weapons to, quote, moderate rebels, which breaks a whole ton of international laws. Nobody asked that question at all, right? The Republicans sure as fuck didn't ask it, because when they had Hillary Clinton on the hot seat, all they asked her was about that night. They didn't say, Madam Secretary, what was the logic of invading Libya 10 months ago and deposing that government and basically destroying a country? What was the logic behind that? Isn't that sort of what we did in Iraq? And that didn't work. Why did you think it would work here? None of those questions happened. It was all Benghazi, 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 because the Republicans are in on it too. This is like wrestling. It's like when the Iron Sheik and Hulk Hogan used to drive to matches in the same car. And on that note, folks, again, thebittertruth.info, INFO. Appreciate the support. Like I said, you want to buy the novel. My novel's on there. The T-shirt, got some stickers. You can do the Patreon link and help support the show. There's a donate button. You want to just do that. Appreciate it too. And again, if this stuff makes you uncomfortable, it's supposed to. Sleep tight.